Hallo, guten Morgen. Ich benutze gerne lernen wir Englisch. Handbook for Mankind. Read Handbook for Mankind. งานหนังสือคู่มือมนุษย์ของท่านพุทธทาสภิกขุอ่านเพื่อศึกษาหลักธรรมของพระพุทธเจ้าผ่านการถ่ายทอดจากหนังสือของท่านพุทธทาสภิกขุอ่านเพื่อพัฒนาภาษาอังกฤษโดยการอ่านออกเสียงถ้าอ่านถูกก็ very good ถ้าอ่านผิดก็ค่อยไปปรับปรุงและพัฒนาต่อไป Let's get started วันนั้นเราถึงหน้าที่25เราอ่านต่อเนื่อง that remains unchanged for even an instant that all things are unsatisfactory means that all things have inherent in them the property of producing to suffering and torment. They are inherently unlikable and disenchanting. That they are not self is to say that in no things whatsoever is there any entity which we might have a right to regard as itself or to call mind. If we grasp at things and cling to things, the result is bound to be suffering. Things are more fire because we can at least see a fire blazing away and so don't go too close to it. Whereas all things are a fire we can't see. Consequently, we go about voluntarily picking up handfuls of fire, which is invariably painful. This teaching tells us what things are like in terms of the three characteristics. Clearly, Buddhism is simply organized or practicalized in desire to show what is political system destroyed. We have seen that we have to know the nature of things. We also have to know how to practice in order to fit in with the nature of things. There is another teaching in the text, known as the chief of all teachings. It consists of 3 brief points. Avoid evil to do good, purify the mind. This is the principle of the practice, knowing all things as impermanent and so not worth clinging to, not worth becoming infatuated with. We have to act appropriately and cautiously with respect to them, and that is to avoid evil. It implies not to break with accepted moral standards and to give up excessive craving and attachment. On the other hand, one is to do good. Good has come to be understood by wise people. These who are simply stages in morality. The third, which helps us to make the mind completely pure of every kind of contaminating Buddhism. It tells us to make the mind free. As long as the mind is not yet free from domination by things, it cannot be a clean, pure mind. Mental freedom must come from the most profound knowledge of what is what. The most profound knowledge. One lacks is knowledge. One is bound to go on mindlessly liking or disliking things in one way or another. As long as one cannot remain unmoved by things, one can hardly be called free. Basically, we human beings are subject to two kinds of emotional states, liking and disliking, which correspond to present and unpleasant mental feeling. We fall slaves to our moods and have no real freedom simply because we don't know the true nature of moods or what is what. Liking is a characteristic of obsessing on things and taking them over. Disliking has the characteristic of pushing things away and getting rid of them. As long as these two kinds of emotional states exist, the mind is not yet free. As long as it is still carelessly liking and disliking this, that and the other, there is no way it can be purified and freed free from the. For this very reason, this highest teaching of Buddhism condemns grasping and clinging to things attractive and repulsive, ultimately condemning even attachment to good and evil. When the mind has been purified of this, when the mind is independent of things, other religions would have us simply and avoid evil and grasp at goodness. They have us grasp at and become attached to goodness, even including the epitome of goodness, namely good. Buddhism goes much further, condemning attachment to anything at all. This attachment to goodness is right practice at the intermediate level, but it just can't take us to the high level no matter what we do. At the lowest level, we avoid evil. At the intermediate level, we do our utmost to do good, while at the highest level, we make the mind float high above the domination of both good and evil. The condition of attachment to the fruits of goodness is not yet complete liberation from suffering, because while an evil person suffers in a way befitting evil persons, a good person suffers also in a way befitting good persons. Being good, one experiences the kind of suffering appropriate to good human beings. The good celestial being experiences the suffering appropriate to celestial beings, and even the good or Brahma experiences the suffering inappropriate to God. But complete freedom from all suffering will come only when one has broken free and transcended even that which we call goodness to become an Aryan. One who has transcended the worldly condition and ultimately become a fully perfected individual, an arahant. Now, as we have seen, Buddhism is the teaching of the Buddha, the enlightened one, and a Buddhist is one who practices according to the teaching of the enlightened one. With regard to what was he enlightened, he simply knew the nature of all things. Buddhism then is the teaching that tells us the truth about what things are really like, or what is what. It is up to us to practice until we have come to know that truth for ourselves. We may be sure that once that perfect knowledge has been attained, craving will be completely destroyed by it, because ignorance will cease to be in the very same moment that knowledge arises. Every aspect of Buddhist practice is designed to bring knowledge. Your whole purpose to setting your mind on the way of practice that will penetrate to Buddha Dhamma is simply to gain knowledge. Only do let it be right knowledge attained through clear insight, not worldly knowledge, partial knowledge, halfway knowledge, which, for example, clumsily mistakes bad for good, and the sort of suffering for sort of happiness. To try your utmost to look at things in terms of suffering, and so come to know gradually, step by step. Knowledge is so gained will be Buddhist knowledge based on sound Buddhist principles. Studying by this method, even a woodcutter without book learning will be able to penetrate the essential of Buddhism. Why a religious Why a religious scholar with several degrees, who is completely absorbed in studying the Tipitaka, but doesn't look at things from this point of view, may not penetrate the teaching at all. Those of us who have some intelligence should be capable of investigating and examining things and coming to know their true nature. Each thing we come across, we must study in order to understand clearly its true nature, and we must understand the nature and the sort of the suffering which produces and which sets us alight, and scorches us to establish mindfulness, to watch and wait, to examine in the manner described the suffering that comes to one. This is the very best way to penetrate to Buddha Dharma. It is infinitely better than learning it from the Tipitaka. Busily studying Dharma in the Tipitaka from the linguistic or literary viewpoint is no way to come to know the true nature of things. Of course, the Tipitaka is full of explanations as to the nature of things, but the trouble is that people listen to it in the manner of the parrots, or talking mina birds, repeating later what they have been able to memorize. They themselves are incapable of penetrating to the true nature of things. If instead they would do some introspection and discover for themselves the facts of mental life, find out firsthand the properties of the mental defilements, of suffering, of nature, in other words, of all the things in which they are involved, they would then be able to penetrate to the real Buddha Dharma, though a person may never have seen or even heard of the Tipitaka. If he carries out detailed investigating every time suffering arises and scourges his mind, he can be said to be studying the Tipitaka directly and far more correctly than people actually in the process of reading it. Here's my sentence of the day. From though to reading it. Sentence of the day. This may be just caressing the books of the Tipitaka every day, without having any knowledge of immortal Dharma. The teaching contained within them, likewise, we have ourselves, we make use themselves, we train ourselves, and we do things connected to ourselves every day, without knowing anything about ourselves, without being able to handle adequately problems. Until หน้าที่30 มาดู sentence of the day. My sentence of the day is, though a person may never have seen, even heard of the Tripitaka. If he carries out detailed investigating every time suffering arises and scourges his mind, he can be said to be studying the Tripitaka directly and far more correctly than people actually the process of reading it เนี่ย คนบางคนแม้จะไม่ได้เคยได้เห็นได้รู้จักได้ยินเกี่ยวกับพระไตรปิฎกตำราพระไตรปิฎกนะที่บันทึกหลักธรรมของพุทธเจ้าไว้นะแต่ถ้าเขาสามารถที่จะเรียนรู้หรือว่าตรวจสอบทุกขณะของความทุกข์การเรียนรู้ความทุกข์นั่นเองนะจากชีวิตนะในใจของเขานะเขาก็จะสามารถที่จะเรียนรู้พระไตรปิฎกได้โดยตรงได้มากกว่าคนที่ไปศึกษาตัวหนังสืออ่านแต่ว่าไม่ได้เรียนรู้จากชีวิตจริงก็ได้ Have a wonderful day all the time bye bye สวัสดีนะคะเอาไว้จะซี